So, some folks you need to know in this section. Who is our main character? Protagonist. Martin Luther. Okay. Martin Luther is upset with the Catholic Church. What is his biggest bone of contention with the Catholic Church, Morgan? He is ticked off about indulgences. Man, I just think of that. Look at that. Okay, what are indulgences? You got to be able to define this. Isaiah?
You're like able to go. When you die, you're not gonna be miserable.
What an indulgence is it's when the Catholic Church, the priest, sells you the equivalent of a sin get-out-of-jail-free card. Is that,
a shorter time in purgatory.
Yeah, a shorter time in purgatory. It's not necessarily an express ticket to heaven, but the idea is that you will die having committed some sins, and so you have to go to purgatory, like work camp, and work that time off in purgatory before you can be admitted to heaven. So what happens with indulgences is you can buy these for your dead relatives. You know, Great Aunt Teresa was envious right before she died, and so I know she's trapped in purgatory, so I want to make this donation to the church and buy an indulgence on Great Aunt Teresa's behalf. And so the priest sells you this indulgence and gives you this ticket that says, Great Aunt Teresa now gets to spend one less month in purgatory. Okay? Eventually, the selling of indulgences becomes such a widespread and pretty corrupt practice that you could pre-buy indulgences. I haven't sinned yet, but I'd like to buy my way out of like 6 months of purgatory time, just in case. Okay. That kind of seems to go against everything that Catholicism stands for, right? And Martin Luther is upset with this practice, this selling of indulgences, and the fact that he sees the church lining its pockets, getting wealthy off of individuals who are then not doing the rightful penance for their sins. Okay? So when he becomes upset about these indulgences, what steps does he take? Somebody other than Morgan. I know the rest of you have read this. Jacob?
He nails the 95 Theses to the church.
He makes a list of his complaints. He writes out the 95 Theses, and he nails them to the door of the church in what city? Wittenberg. And it may be URG, I always forget. Okay. Why would he nail them to the door of the church? So the church leaders would notice them, yes, but he also sends copies around. But Stephen?
So any passerby would come around and read that?
Yeah, the church is like the equivalent of today's shopping mall. Everybody gets there, right? Remember, it's where the market is held. Everybody goes to church on Sunday. If Martin Luther were alive today, what would he do with his 95 Theses? What? Yeah, he would definitely blog about them. I don't know if he could, 95 individual tweets, if he could have gotten each complaint down to, 140 characters? Okay. He would have had a boatload of followers in no time, wouldn't he? In fact, even back then, he had a lot of followers. Okay. So the reaction to this posting of the 95 Theses was pretty rapid, right? Word gets to Rome, and the Pope was like, oh, no, you didn't. You do not go dissing my church. And says, take it back. And Luther says, nuh-uh. And so what does the Pope do? Excommunicates him. And that means what? No more sacraments. And for a guy who is a priest in the Catholic Church, he can't practice as a priest in the Catholic Church, he can't receive last rites, he can't receive Holy Communion, he can't go to confession. This is a problem. So Luther has this friend, Frederick, right?
Yeah.
Who says, I want you to be able to plead your case. And Luther says, not to the Pope. And he says, no, not to the Pope, because the Pope, by excommunicating you, has made you subject to secular law. Well, who's secularly in charge of Europe at this time?
Princess.
Charles X, who is, what's his title?
Holy.
Emperor.
He's the Holy Roman Emperor. And how do we write the 10th? X. Charles V. Charles V. You're right. I'm in Spain already. Shouldn't. Thank you. Charles V.
That's a good name for a king.
Okay. Charles V. Now, the Holy Roman Emperor. The old saying goes, the Holy Roman Emperor is neither holy nor Roman nor really an emperor. Certainly not holy, though he is crowned by the Pope. He's not Roman. Charles V happens to be what? German. And he's not really an emperor because what does he rule?
A confederacy.
A confederacy, a loose affiliation of states, of which he is king of one of them. It's basically all these other monarchs agree we'll be stronger if we hang out together. He's like Jefferson Davis in the American Civil War. He doesn't really have any power over most of the territory that he, quote, controls. Okay? But he does have power over law enforcement. And so he says, all right, we're going to have a meeting. And what do we call these meetings, these big official meetings in the Holy Roman Empire? Diets. And we spell that diet. So we have a diet, and where do we have it? Worms. So the Diet of Worms. And this is a big official meeting of all of the states within the Holy Roman Empire. And one part of it is we're going to deal with this whole Luther mess. Okay? So he summons Luther and he says, you can recant. What does recant mean? To take it back. To recant is to take it back. And Luther says, I can't recant. It's like, have you ever said something mean to a sibling or something, and a teacher or your parent says, say you're sorry, right? They're trying to force you to apologize, and you're so mad, you're like, I'm not actually sorry. I can't apologize, right? I meant to punch him in the face, and I'm not sorry I did it. I don't care what you punish me with. That is essentially what Luther says. Here I stand, this I can do, and no other. He says, I believe everything I said. I've said it. I'm not taking it back. Punish me however you want. And so the punishment is going to be what? He's an outlaw. He's going to be put to death. And so Frederick does what? Whisks him away and hides him off in a castle in the mountains. While Luther is there, he translates the Bible into German, and it becomes published. Now, let's spend a little time talking about some of Luther's other complaints. In addition to the indulgences, what else was Luther upset about? He said people should be able to read the Bible for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's one of the things you have to do in order to be able to read the Bible for yourself?
Be able to read it.
You have to be able to be literate, and it's easier to be literate in a language you speak than in a language you don't.
Yeah.
And so getting the Bible translated into the vernacular and getting it printed on this printing press thingy is going to be pretty important. What are some of Luther's other complaints with the church?
He hated the sacraments they invented.
Right, there should be only two sacraments. And what are they?
Baptism and last rite and
Nope.
Supper.
Baptism and what's the common word for the Lord's Supper? Communion. Luther says only do 2 sacraments. What else? He had 95 complaints, guys. You don't have to know them all, but. Morgan?
Should have a school.
Yes, the people should be educated. Now, Luther wasn't crazy. When he said people should be educated, what's he talking about?
About the Bible.
He's not talking about educating girls. Boys should be taught to read and write. Girls are girls. Okay? They're baby factories. We appreciate them for that. Move on. Luther also believed that not all of the money that goes to the church should go to Rome. Luther said that shouldn't happen. Some of that money that's given to the church should stay right here to help the people right here. It shouldn't go to make the Pope live in a lavish palace in his luxurious life in Rome. Okay. Is Luther the only guy who takes issue with the Catholic Church?
No.
We have some other characters we should talk about. For instance, Jan Hus. Hus actually comes before Luther. Is he very successful? Now, in fact, before he can make much of an impact, the Catholic Church shuts him up by burning him at the stake. That is a particularly awful way to die. They stake you up, and you are elevated off the ground. You're standing on a little board nailed to the stake. You're tied to it, and they build the fire below your feet, and they build it good and hot and roaring. And so you don't so much burn as you roast in the heat that rises from the fire. Your feet get warm first, right? Have you ever sat by a campfire? Right? Your face is all hot and toasty and your backside's all cold, so you turn around and then you try to get yourself brown on all sides, right? Well, being burned at the stake, you can smell your feet cooking while you're being burned at the stake. And your flesh is not that different from other flesh that we cook and eat, so the smell of burgers on the grill, a little similar to that. And the fat is dripping off of you and sizzling in the flames. But mercifully, one nice thing about being burned at the stake, Tristan, you okay? One nice thing about being burned at the stake is all of that heat and fire also produces smoke. And so you are going to sear your lungs with that heat and be inhaling the smoke. And so you will die of asphyxiation before you actually burn to death. But you will have experienced some sincere pain first, because there's 2 places in your body that have the most nerve endings: fingertips and feet. So you're in some agony before you die, but you don't live to burn all the way to death, fortunately. So Jan Hus, yeah, he's kind of a factor, but not so much. Who's some of Luther's more contemporaries who have some issues with the Catholic Church? Jacob?
John Calvinist.
John Calvin is his name. Okay. And the religion that grows out of what he preaches is called Calvinism. Yeah, it is clever. It's a stretch. Anybody else?
John Wycliffe.
No. You don't have to know Wycliffe.
Frederick the Wise.
Frederick the Wise is the ruler who protects Martin Luther. He's not necessarily an anti-Catholic reformer himself, though. Zwingli? Is he in your book? Huh?
Yeah.
Zwingli is another one And do they, doggone it, I can't get this to, does the book talk about Knox at all?
A little bit.
Zwingli and Knox. Okay. All of these guys are significant Protestant reformers. They are all going to cause problems for the Catholic Church. Out of Luther and these folks, what movement arises? It's known as the Protestant Reformation. And Protestants comes from, what are they doing? Protesting. They are Protestants because they are protesting. They're saying there is a problem here that needs to be fixed.
Isn't that name kind of outdated now? They aren't protesting anymore.
That's true. They're not protesting anymore. What would you like to change them to?
I don't know. No idea.
So does that name work as well as any other, maybe? Because it reminds us of their origins. Okay. Anything I've missed? Anything you have questions about? Stuff you took notes over that I haven't mentioned that you want to know, is this important? Morgan?
The Peace of Augsburg.
The Peace of Augsburg. Yes, that is important. Good question. Okay, what happens is that because Frederick protected Martin Luther, and other princes will protect and stand behind the Catholic Church, there will be other princes still who stand behind other Protestant reformers. You end up with a war going on amongst all of these German princes. Okay, you have the protesting princes and the Catholic princes, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight. And the Peace of Augsburg is the resolution of that war. Okay. It is signed at a little city named Augsburg. Okay, thus the Peace of Augsburg. And what are the terms of the Peace of Augsburg? Stephen?
It allows every prince to choose what religion.
Each prince chooses what his little principality's religion is going to be. No prince is going to impose his religion on the neighboring group. Any other terms? Do you think this is a good solution to the problem?
No.
Why not?
It still gives the power of choice to the higher ups, not the individuals.
The ruler gets to choose, the people don't. Well, you don't like the religion your ruler chooses, then move. Except, while feudalism is on its way out, it's not completely on its back feet in the air, curled like a roach yet. Okay? So people are still kind of trapped by what their prince chooses. Morgan?
Oh, are we going to need to know the specifics of Calvinism?
The specifics of Calvinism. You know, for instance, are you thinking a couple of vocab words?
Yeah.
Like predestination?
Yes.
Yes, is the answer to that. Predestination and a term called elect. Okay. Calvin said everybody is either going to heaven or going to hell. And God knows the answer to that before you're born. That's the predestination. He knows your destination before you're born. You are predestined to go. So you could be Charles Manson. You guys know who Charles Manson is?
Killer.
Okay, bad dude. You could be Charles Manson, And under the Calvinist doctrine, you have to believe that it's possible that Charles Manson is predestined to go to heaven. Now, Calvinism is going to tell you nobody who's predestined to go to heaven is going to live like Charles Manson. But the possibility is there because who knows? Only God knows. Calvinism goes further and he says the group of people who are predestined to go to heaven are known as the elect. Okay? That group who are called the elect are the ones that we're pretty sure. We think they're going to heaven. Now here's the trick. It's all about public relations. Right? In Calvinist society, these are small groups of people together all the time, right? Everybody knows whether you got up and went to church that Sunday or not. Small little village. So what do you want everybody to think about you?
That you're going to.
You want them all to think that you are elect, right? So how can you most appear to be elect? Live a very pious, perfect religious life, right? When do you get to find out if that all worked out for you? After you're dead. So nobody gets to know whether you actually were elect or not. But society as a whole operates very smoothly because everybody is trying to convince everybody else that they are elect. So in theory, there are no sinful acts. No lying, no thieving, no cheating, no stealing, no murder, no incest. It's a perfect world because everybody is so busy trying to convince everybody else that they're perfect. Now, in the United States, during the colonial period, there's going to be a woman who stands up and says, hey, let me get this straight. We're either elect or we're not. We're either predestined to go to heaven or hell. And so I can whoop it up and go to heaven, or I can whoop it up and go to hell. Or I can live your stinking, boring, religious, plain clothes, everyday grind kind of life, and I can go to heaven, or I can go to hell. Well, which would you choose? Yeah, who wouldn't whoop it up if the odds were the same, right? That causes some problems. It gets her kicked out of Massachusetts Bay Colony. Anybody know her name? Anne Hathaway? No, not Anne Hathaway. Shoot. I just had it. Oh.
It's from the movie Easy A.
It's not from the movie Easy A. It's from American History, Grayson. It's not based in the movie Easy A. It's from American History. What is her
Sorry,
name?
I'm
Now I've
missing it.
forgotten it. Doggone it.
I thought it was in.
She ends up
It's
in...
not Anne Hathaway.
No, it's not Anne Hathaway. She ends up in Rhode Island. It's not Scarlett Johansson either. Darn it. I will come up with the answer for you tomorrow.
Wait, no, wasn't Easy about a woman who like?
Yeah,
Yeah,
was
that's
about
she-
it
The
was
movie
adult-
Easy A is
Yeah.
based on
It was
that.
for adultery, not for like
Yeah.
for Calvinism.
Steven.
We have to know about theocracy.
Yes, theocracy. Theocracy, another vocab word. Theocracy, good one. Theocracy is what? It's when a government is run by religious leaders. It's run on the basis of religious rules. Don't we have 5 more minutes?
Yeah, I don't know.
Get out of level.
Yeah, chill. Packing up 5 minutes left. Wow. Yeah, theocracy is government run by religious rulers. Can you think of a nation in the world today that might have a theocracy?
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia has a theocracy. What religion is its rule based on? Islam. Okay. Muslim is the name given to a person who practices the religion of Islam. You guys have got to start getting that straight. Islam is the religion. Someone who practices Islam is a Muslim.
So Christianity is
Christianity is practiced by Christians. Judaism is practiced by Jews. Good. Other questions from this section? I will tell you, Stephen just saved you a quiz point.
Yeah.
by asking that question. There's a no theocracy is a straight up question on the quiz.
What is theocracy?
Oh yeah.
Grayson! Grayson just asked, what is theocracy? Help him out since I just explained it 3 times.
No,
Government-
I was just saying that's one of the questions.
Stop.
Yes.
Get on the
Didn't
Morgan?
hear that.
Are we gonna know anything about, have to know anything about Geneva?
Geneva, no. No more than you have to know specifically where any religion originated. You don't need to worry about that now. Anything else? Yes, ma'am?
Do we have to know like what Lutheranism is and like the ideas behind Calvinism and Lutheranism and like compare them?
No, that's deeper than we need to go into the
Please
religions.
stand for the pledge. Jack Polina will lead us.